this year, crossing into this country, shattering all previous records. The total number of encounters, 2.3 million. That's a big number. 600,000 so-called gotaways. Border cities like El Paso, Texas, particularly hit hard with hundreds, if not thousands, of migrants sleeping in the streets. And lately, as you know, sub-freezing temperatures. Enter Title 42, the federal order allowing migrants to be turned away due to the COVID health emergency. The White House has been trying to end it. Republicans have been trying to keep it in place as a way to curb illegal border crossings. And the Supreme Court just handed Republicans a minor victory, extending the COVID-era policy until June. But there was an interesting twist. Conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch, siding with his liberal counterparts, writing, interestingly, in his dissent, quote, "The current border crisis is not a COVID crisis, and courts should not be in the business of perpetuating administrative edicts designed for one emergency only because elected officials have failed to address a different emergency. We are a court of law, not policymakers of last resort," end quote. In other words, Congress needs to do their job and fix this, not the courts. And he's absolutely right. Texas Democrat Henry Cuellar, he agrees. He's been very critical of the White House all along. Watch this.
Without due respect to the administration, I agree we need to do immigration reform, but they can change the policy by having order at the border where they can say they did it for the Venezuelan. Quite honestly, I think the Homeland Security Department is struggling with some of the more progressive White House staffers, and I hope Homeland wins this particular fight.
I don't know. I don't even like Homeland Security. The problem is both sides are dug in, meaning the department, not the idea of it. Democrats, they want to appease the far left. Republicans, they're happy to do nothing so they can keep bashing Democrats for the crisis. And as we all know, the White House thinks it's all a fun joke.
Do you have plans to visit the border?
Not today. But I have before, and I'm sure I will again.
Ah, she's so full of hot malarkey. By the way, she hasn't really visited the border. So did the court get the Title 42 decision right or wrong at this point? Joining me now to discuss our party panel, we've got host of the Jason Rantz Show. Look at that Space Needle. Look at that man. It's Jason Rantz. We've also got the host of the Richard Fowler Show. We've got so many shows, so many hosts, and a luscious panel to go along with it. He's a Fox News contributor. He is Richard Fowler, and she is the co-founder of Based Politics here in Royal Bleu. She got the memo. It is Hannah Cox. Welcome, one and all. Great to see you. Jason, I will start with you. Did Justice Gorsuch get this right with the way he laid out what the court should and should not be doing?
He did. He got it 100% correct. The court should not be involved here because it's not a legal issue. It's, in fact, a political issue. Now, I support Title 42. I don't think that it has really anything to do with COVID. It was a policy that was put in place taking advantage of COVID so that we can do something to stem the tide of immigration coming through the southern border. But at the end of the day, this should be handled by Congress. And I think your point is 100% correct. No one seems to really want to do anything, or at least they're not able to get a consensus to do something. On the Democrat side, they clearly want this border to be open. They have political reasons behind that. Yeah. On the Republican side, I think that there is enough of a Republican pushback to not just want to focus on security, but also deal with, for example, DACA or the millions of people who are in this country illegally right now, short of just going ahead and granting them all citizenship. So I think that there's some internal struggle there. But I do ultimately think there's more of a consensus to get border security on the Republican side than the Democrats. Mm-hmm. And Republicans are just simply not going to want to come to a compromise on that, because I think at the end of the day, you can't compromise on national security.
Well, and if you don't see it as a national security issue, you don't really have the same urgency. My problem is, Richard, I don't have a problem with immigration. I think immigration, it's better for individuals to be able to choose their own fate. The problem is, I don't think that citizenship is a magic solution to any of this. There's so many things that have to happen before we grant this mass amnesty and a path to citizenship for millions and millions of people. If you don't fix what's wrong structurally with our immigration system, meaning what is happening at the border, then that acts as a further chaotic magnet. Your thoughts?
I think that's right, Kennedy, and I actually agree with Jason on some of this, which is a rarity. So here's what I think has to happen. I think there has to be a solution, and I think the solution lies in the United States Congress. And I think solution's multifaceted. I think, one, we have to do something around border security, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And I think we also have to figure out how we deal with the 11 million folks living here and how we stem the tides of those folks crossing the border. And part of that requires us holding corporations accountable when they hire folks who are undocumented. Well, back when Trump was in office, Democrats put on the floor this idea that we would fund border security, and at the same time we would put in E-Verify, saying if you're a company and you want to hire somebody, you have to go through the E-Verification system. Folks at the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations balked at that because that would say if you're a corporation, be responsible if you hired somebody that was undocumented. So there goes to Jason's point, some of the inconsistencies on the conservative side. But I think with the chambers now divided, you have an opportunity to actually get something really done. Let's modernize our immigration system, increase the amount of judges that we have in the immigration courts, use the internet, right? Because these laws were written before the time of the internet, right? These laws were written before I was, like, in the early 80s, before I was even born, and we now live in 2023, and we're operating on laws that happened before the creation of the iPhone, which is insane to me, right? And let's actually figure out a way to stem the tides of those folks crossing the border, while also dealing with DACA and the folks who are in this country in the shadows, bringing them out of the shadows, and at the same time working on making sure that if you want to apply for asylum, you can do it on your phone and get an adjudication from a judge, I don't know, maybe via FaceTime or some sort of secure Zoom-type process. This all could be done very simply, but it requires the will from Congress to do it. And because both parties seem to want to use this as a political football, we'll be here for quite some time.
They don't have the will to do it. That's the problem, Hannah. And, you have pointed out that they sort of blob together legal immigration and illegal immigration, and that causes harm to the entire process, which again is already a disaster.
It is a disaster. And I think when it comes to Title 42, there's a couple problems going on here. One, it is a pandemic era rule. You can like its end goals. It doesn't mean that they got there in a constitutionally sound way. If you don't think the federal government should be able to cancel people's rent or cancel student debt because they were using this huge public health loophole, then you also cannot agree that they can shove through this kind of immigration rule that they had no ability to actually get through with votes in Congress. So I think a lot of Republicans are being very inconsistent in supporting this. I think the 19 states, they're mostly red states that are suing to keep this in place, are wrong. And I think Neil Gorsuch is, per usual, a constitutional gangster. I think he's batting 1,000 on the Supreme Court. He was absolutely right in his dissent.
Yep.
And I am tired of hearing Republicans say that they only have a problem with illegal immigration. They often say this, we're fine with legal immigration. Well, no, you're not, because you're constantly working to shut down and limit the few legal avenues we have for immigration, including asylum seekers, which is what Title 42 targets. So I think that's so hypocritical, and I think that if you actually want people to come here legally, then you need to make it expedient. You need to make it easy, make it safe and fast, and none of this is moving in that direction. So I'm tired of seeing people.
No, absolutely not. It's so
much
easier to politicize it than come up with practical solutions that will be better for all parties involved, not just the two dumb parties who, again, don't have the cojones to really tackle this. Panel, do not move any of your beautiful muscles. We need so much more from you, and we've got you a little later in the show.